All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the last of our lectures on the esoteric tradition, which does not mean, of course, that we will not return to it again, but we will move on, and you will see the new flyers available to the four Gnostic Gospels. Thomas, Philip, Gospel of Truth, and the Gospel of the Egyptians, which are the four scriptures by curious synchronicity of the Nag Hammadi collection, just like there are four Gospels in the canonical collection. And we will try to extricate from them particularly relevant passages to our troubled times and to our needs. But this evening we are still within the overall topics of the esoteric tradition, wherein the only thing to introduce the subject again that we may need to engage in is that as those of you who have seen Tevier in The Fiddler on the Roof, tradition, you will remember that a tradition is a complex situation. It would be easy to say that it's a teaching, but I am very much against that, because what we are dealing with is something much more profound than a teaching. The representatives of the esoteric tradition, right down to our own days, almost with H.P. Blavatsky and Manly Hall and people like that, they were not teachers in a little red schoolhouse. They were more than that. They were conveyors of transformative and informative truth. They were trying to convey material which would act as stimuli to the greatly needed internal processes of transformation of the people to whom they were addressing. And that's much more than teaching. Unfortunately, and I keep repeating this because it's a kind of hobby horse of mine, maybe I should get away from it, namely that one of the difficulties with the present formulations of the esoteric tradition is that they originated to a major extent in the 19th century. And the 19th century was, as Carl Jung said, the real Dark Ages. Much more so than the Middle Ages. Because they had moved the direction of interest and of study almost exclusively to the sphere of the intellect in the Western world. And as such, they have limited it tremendously. If indeed, once again, and we will do quite a bit of Jung tonight, if indeed we take Carl Jung's word for it, they had reduced it sort of to at least 1/4 of the necessary instructional and transformative material that they could have used. Why? Because we have pretty well established in modern psychology, the functions of consciousness, which are, if I can recollect them correctly, sensation, feeling, thinking, intuition, and the transcendent function to the spirit. And when you reduce all of this to merely thinking, then you have done a very faithful reduction, because you have limited your approach, the instrumentalities of your search, to a small instrumentality, namely that of the thinking mind, which is quite important. I am the last one to advocate lack of thinking, because I would advocate something that is very prevalent in our culture. There is much too little thinking going on. So we don't want to go more in that direction, for heaven's sake, because we'll turn a total group of what in German, and I have some of my friends here who speak German, is called a Dummkopf, which is a wonderful German word that means stupid head. It's not your foot that's stupid, it's not your shoulder that's stupid, it's your head that's stupid. So that could be a real problem. So we have to watch that. But what of course has happened, that it's sort of maybe one little metaphor that one could use, modern metaphor, is that you've been watching a huge sort of cinemascope screen, and then all of a sudden something happened and it's reduced to a tiny little screen, which actually happened because people are all watching their little magic boxes, tiny little screens. You can't figure out what the heck is in it unless you know in advance because you took the picture to begin with. So that can be a problem, and that's one that we should rather not encounter. But let us say we need to keep in mind that for better or for worse, and certainly we would say for better, there has been not only a series of disjointed teachings or teachers, but that there has been an ongoing tradition with an approach to reality that its advocates were able to hand on, which is the nature of a tradition, tradere, hand on, and which it would seem, if our conjectures have any degree of veracity whatsoever, it would seem that this process of handing on such a tradition has been with us for an exceedingly long time, perhaps since the beginning of our presence here on earth. And so this being the case, we want to take a look now at maybe the most difficult way of approaching this subject, which is in terms of the future, in terms of perhaps some conjectural view of the future. And that, as you know, is a very difficult task. So this is really the most difficult of our talks this month. But as we never shy away here from difficulty, although we frequently succumb to it in various ways, we shall attempt it. And in fact, I'm always reminded on these occasions of a real Hollywood figure, whom it was our dubious privilege to see and hear both on television and maybe every once in a while in person, the great Hollywood prophet of yesteryear, Criswell. Criswell predicts was a nationally syndicated television program, and this gentleman, I think he was an albino. He had very whitish hair, very pale face, fairly good-looking gentleman at that, and his profession was predicting. And he would usually start his television program out by saying, tomorrow, tomorrow, and tomorrow, here today and gone tomorrow. And he said, so look for your wonderful, wonderful tomorrow and listen to Criswell predicts. And then a very bombastic music would come on. And he was really something. In any event, so let's say predicting, discerning in some fashion, even a portion of the future is something that humankind has always been interested in, and which, because of this inherent interest, will never really go away. And that doesn't mean that we are channeling Criswell tonight. We had once, there was some kind of an anniversary celebration of, I think it was a date that Criswell predicted when the world would come to an end. And so we had a little bit of publicity, and let me tell you, this room was entirely filled with people clear out onto the street. Everybody wanted to know as to what in Criswell's vision the world will be like. And my cousin Charles, who is from a theatrical family but a great scholar and a great writer, we dressed him up as Criswell. And he was up there on the stage, with a white wig, and was a great success, never to be duplicated. In any event, let us say, one way or the other, the interest in the future, of course, has always been with us for understandable reason. And in this particular case, we must in part rely on historical observation, and in part, I at least have chosen to rely on, how should we put it, on ahistorical speculation. So first of all, the historical speculation deals with the evident fact that practically any time of history that you may take a look at, in any part of our world, you will find elements of a teaching, teaching combined with practice, which is not followed by the majority, but still has a tremendous effect on people, and is very much worthy of investigation and perhaps of practice. And since I think that's a 19th century development too, although I'm not so sure, there was a time when the two words exoteric and esoteric came to be used in a more frequent fashion. People have come to accept the notion that there are exoteric traditions of learning, of spirituality, of all of these things, which are, as Carl Jung would put it, of an extroverted nature. their gaze, their attention is directed on the outer world and the effects, the activities therein. But that parallel with this tradition, much more subdued, much more quietly, much more hidden away is an esoteric tradition. So this exoteric and esoteric, these are just two words that have been invented. And curiously enough, this esoteric tradition always had certain main features in common. Not everything, details. I mean, if you want to find the esoteric tradition, as many have in India, it will be different from the esoteric tradition in Europe or in the Americas or something of that sort, but not entirely different. And I intend to emphasize and use a particular source tonight in that regard, because it seems to me, if I'm not wrong, and I could very well be, after all, I am not a pope, not even the Gnostic pope, and as such I am not infallible, but I have a bit of a feeling that this is fairly close to being accurate. And the accuracy is this, that the so-called esoteric or inner or whatever else it may be called tradition has one feature, one recognition, one insight in common that always reappears. There may be all kinds of other things. I hope there are not too many vegetarians around, because I liken the exoteric tradition as sort of the garnishing around a nice big plate of steak. You know, there are other little things there, and they make the main dish taste better, but the main dish is the main dish. And the main dish is this, that unbeknownst to most people, unrecognized, and only very seldom brought forward, there is a strange hidden commodity. I don't know what else to call it. A strange hidden something that is contained inside, deeply hidden away in the human being. And this unseen and frequently unrecognized commodity is the heart, is the soul, is the very essence of the esoteric tradition. You can call it this, you can call it that. In this evening's discussion, we will primarily call it spiritual, or by the Greek name of the spiritual, or anything of that sort, because how should we put it? The multifaceted nature of the human has, of course, always been recognized. Only the facets number and description will vary. But among these many facets, there are, as I mentioned before, starting with the extroverted or physically oriented conscious vision, there are steps after steps after steps, to use a metaphor, and ultimately the step is into an extremely powerful and extremely mysterious region, which the ancient Greeks, who, as you know, knew everything, and they are truly, it has been said by a number of, I think, very perceptive people, that whatever else you may think, we are all children of the Greeks because of their fantastic proclivity not only toward philosophy and proto-science, let us say, but toward deep and transformative insight, the mysteries, the things that not only inform but transform. This important tendency, this important faculty, they have handed on to us in part within the esoteric tradition. So there is, the Greeks already knew and proclaimed that there is a hidden something, a hidden quality, a hidden talent within the human being. And probably the talent is the best expression, because a talent, among other things, is a name for an ancient currency. So, a dollar is a talent, although the present dollar perhaps doesn't deserve it so much anymore. So there is a hidden talent, which is the talent of conjoining our conscious awareness with a tremendously profound, a tremendously effective, and ultimately, we might say even in a religious term, salvific quality, which can redound to the benefit of the human being in many, many ways, but which has primarily been regarded as spiritual. And this is of very great importance, because our real discussion this evening will concern primarily that. I think that if indeed the esoteric tradition has a future, if indeed this is not the end of our culture, of our spirituality, of our consciousness, as it well might be. Because we live in a, to say the very least and to put it most mildly, we live in a very peculiar period of history. And I could have a lot of descriptions for it which are far less complimentary than the word peculiar. And let's say when such periods arise in a culture, in history, in a country, in a people, there is always the possibility of a transformation that may be so radical that it will, for all intents and purposes, be the end of that culture. However, we have to be at least a little bit optimistic and hope that that is not what is going to happen. And let us say, if indeed that fatal finality will not arrive, then I think a close look at some of what is involved in the possibility of being redeemed from such a phase can be. Now, we are all aware, to a greater or lesser extent, that for over 100 years now, we have been living, among other, perhaps among other things, in the age of psychology, because it was in the year 1900, almost right on the nose, that a handsome, dark-haired and dark-bearded, cigar-smoking doctor in Vienna by the name of Sigmund Freud had discovered an approach to the inner being of the human which was not there before, and which at least for about 100 years had caused a tremendous transformation and upheaval in our Western culture. Even though I'm not a Freudian, in spite of the fact that I spent years earning my livelihood in collecting research information about Freud, because I was the research assistant of famous American historical novelist Irving Stone, who was writing his really very wonderful historical novel, Passions of the Mind, on Sigmund Freud at that time, and who hired me for that task. So in any event, in spite of that, let us say I have a great regard and respect for Sigmund Freud and for what he started. Sometimes to start something important is far more important than continuing it, strange as that may sound. Because, you know, folks, if you never start anything, then you're never going to continue with anything, and you're never going to do anything. So it's very important to start. And sometimes our starting things don't turn out all that well. I don't like to think about some of the futile things that I started in my life and that never went anywhere. But it is still very important, and this was the start. It was a start in a sense because for the first time in many hundreds of years, there was a concerted effort on the part of a very determined and very courageous man and his associates to penetrate as deeply as possible into the interiority of the human being and to find what might be found there. And they found a lot of very interesting things. Now, of course, just because something is found, that doesn't mean that it's not going to get lost, too. I'm sure that we have participated in the futile process of finding and losing many times in our lives. That is part of life. And so now, as far as medical psychology, often called psychiatry, in our age is concerned, the lion's share of Sigmund Freud's discoveries has been pushed under the rug, has been lost, and has been buried by mountains and mountains of pills. Because we're a druggy culture. You know, people say, oh, people were druggies in the 1960s. What about all the doctors who are druggies now? You know, and non-doctors. So I don't want to get too excited here. You know, it might damage my aged health. So maybe I better not do that. But let's say, you know, there has been a move away in medical science from the depth psychological viewpoint, but not entirely and not by everybody. And so I will use in part the formulations of the discoveries of a lady whom actually very few people know, even in psychological circles now, if they were not active in the C.G. Jung Institute at an early period, who I think has, let us say, enunciated a number of terribly important maxims, terribly important discoveries, which might still be of very great importance to us, and which are, at least in my view, definitely connected with the esoteric tradition. The author I am speaking of is a lady whose name was, well, she's no longer with us, Eleanor Bertini, probably a German-Italian name, who lived much of her life in New York, and who was a very active member of the New York C.G. Jung Institute, and a very, very great and intimate friend of another very great American Jungian, Esther Harding, some of whose works about the Great Mother, about the feminine psyche and things like that, you probably have come across. In fact, the two ladies owned a house together, not that this is terribly important, somewhere over there near the ocean, on some island and it was the only private home, as far as I know. And if I'm corrected about this, I'm going to do penance. But it was the only private home in the United States or on the American continent where Carl Gustav Jung came and stayed overnight several times when he was in the USA, because he was a great friend of both of these ladies. Now, here, what I will do is I will extrapolate in very brief fashion from a book that is practically unknown, Eleanor Bertini's work, Jung's Contribution to Our Time, where she outlined, how many? She outlined 5 or 6? 6, no, 8. It's more than 5 or 6. 8 recognitions which she felt were of crucial, absolutely crucial importance in order to, in our view, the we might put it, to revive and to save the esoteric tradition. And I don't think Madame Bertini would have been against that definition, because she was well aware and gave voice, and so did Esther Harding, to the fact that should not be disputed, that Carl Gustav Jung was one of the greatest esoteric teachers of our time. So let me mention some of these, but let me say once again, they all point to one thing, to the heart of the esoteric tradition, which is not reincarnation, which is not spiritual masters in Tibet. I am now flagellating my theosophical friends, you know. After all, I've been a member an active member of the Theosophical Society since 1952, and I'm entitled to hurl some insults against my brothers and sisters. Why? Because it's fun. That's why. And one should have fun with these things. And so let us say, you know, I'm saying these things, or various features of the so-called New Age, which are really all the children and the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren of theosophy and of that great enunciator of the esoteric tradition, H.P. Blavatsky. So, and what is that? That there is a component, as I said, a component, a potential, a hidden commodity inside every human being, which, if and when cultivated, aroused, brought forth into as full a manifestation as possible, will cause an unbelievably powerful and irreversible transformation of the individual in whom this discovery takes place. We have a miracle inside of ourselves, which, however, has not been touched, the miraculous potential of which has just occasionally been intimated here and there, and for which reason it is hidden. Now, this has to do to a great extent with this hidden potential, and it is sort of my little addition to her work and to the Jungian corpus, that this hidden commodity is the heart and soul of the esoteric tradition. And no one could deny that, because you can travel the world not only of people, but the world of spiritually informed and spiritually active people, and in some fashion, under some name, in some context, you will find it everywhere. From India to the Kurili Islands, from Europe onto the continent of America, and everywhere, wherever there are humans and wherever there have been humans, it is there. And its existence and its hoped for manifestation has been the hope of humanity, the desire of the wise, the love of the lovers since time immemorial, because upon it is based the entire esoteric tradition. So I will now, if you don't mind, because this subject is also described to some extent in my what I really consider to me to be what the French call my chef-d'œuvre, my main work, the Gnostic Jung and the 7 Sermons to the Dead, where if you want to read this particular portion, you don't want to read the rest of it, be my guest, between the pages 36 and, let us see, 40 something. 36 and 40. Come on now, really. And 41. All right. Now let me start with the first one. She called these she called them discoveries, key factors in her book Jung's Contribution to Our Time. And I think the term that she really used, was conclusion. So the first conclusion is that, and she uses the Greek word, a pneumatic that is spiritual or more than personal element is an organic part of the human psyche. Here she shows herself a good Gnostic, because it is reported of the Gnostics of long ago and far away that they said that a human being is not merely a creature of materiality, which is Greek is called hyle, and not of a personal mind-emotion complex, which may be called psyche, but that there is a third potency indwelling the soul, which is spirit, pneuma, or in Latin, spiritus. Now, this being the case, let's just stop at that strikes me at that particular point this potency, this commodity, this potential is one about which, excuse me, the great enunciator of the esoteric tradition in the 19th century, Madame Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, referred to when she called it the spirit, the Atma, the ultimate essence of true humanity. She used the word essence, essentia. Now that's a very precious word to me, because being a Hungarian, we have a famous wine, which is called the Tokai wine, because it comes from the region of Tokai in Hungary. And the best, and at the same time most potent, and therefore most transformative form of the Tokai wine is the essence of Tokai, Tokai Asu. So that shows you that essence is very, very important. Now, the recognition of this possibility, of this potentiality of human nature, I think is of crucial importance for the future. Why? Because you know and I know, and if you don't know, then you should know, that this essence and any intimation of it has been banished, exorcised, chased out, abused in our culture to the nth degree. Every kind of sexual fantasy, let us say, is preferred to it. And every kind of other unprovable fantasy to which the mercenary medical profession bows down to, and things like that. All of these are there, but this has been forgotten about. And yet if you look into cultures going clear back to Sumer, or the oldest cultures that we have any information of, we can find it there. People know about it. People realize that within them, deeply hidden away in layers of other faculties, layers of a physical body, layers of emotionality, layers of intellectuality, layers of transcendental desire. Onto all these layers, like the body of a pharaoh in his sevenfold coffins, lies, sleeps something tremendously important, tremendously powerful, and tremendously salvific, that is redeeming. Something that has within it the answer to all of our questions. Something that has within it the medicine that in the sickness of this world we need greatly. And of course it is hidden. That is where we are dealing with a hidden tradition. Yet it does not need to remain hidden. It has not always been hidden. And in every culture there was contained at least one school of spirituality that addressed itself to this. sometimes successfully, sometimes maybe not so successfully. And then usually something came in, another war, another revolution, another destruction, which chased it away so that it had to go underground. But somehow in the collective memory of humanity there was one element. Yes, at one time I was in touch with something great. Sometime I was in touch with something wonderful, something incredible, something so glorious that the glories cannot be described, and something of such illuminative and transformative power that once you have experienced it, not only will you never forget it, but at some point, no matter how far you may have wandered from its recognition, it will come back to you, and it will enlighten you again, it will illumine you again, it will save you again. So this is definitely all, this is the center, this is the essence. So that such an essence exists is the ground upon which the esoteric tradition is built. And therefore, in some fashion, in some ways, we have to hang on to this. We should not let it go away. We should not allow external factions, external developments in the culture to obscure it and to ultimately take it away from us. Now, the conclusions to be drawn from this for our purpose of the future obviously are many, and I don't need to enumerate them to you. But among them is certainly that the essence of our being is something that we should stay in touch with. And if we don't stay in touch with it, if we allow a secularization, as it is called now, a secularization of the culture to chase it away from our souls, then we are in very great and abiding trouble. Now then, let's see what else Eleanor Bertini said. The second conclusion is that this spiritual element carries on an active dialogue with the personal element of our selfhood through the use of symbols. So what does that mean? The essence within us is not mute. It speaks to us. It talks to us. It is not buried in a great big tomb, but it is able in its own way, which is of course perhaps the problem, to communicate with us. Dreams, visions, altered states of consciousness, and what Jung called synchronistic experiences are probably the most important avenues for such symbolic communications. Now, once again, you have to keep in mind, and Eleanor Bertini used the word symbolic very advisedly, that we are not dealing here with the kind of communication that you get on the mundane level or in your mundane schools. But what we are dealing, there is a language which this mysterious inner being, whom St. Paul the Apostle called the Christ in you, the hope of glory, and to which various other names have been affixed, of course, also, that this, it has its own language. And this language is the language of symbols. And here again, the Greeks, I think, were very great instructors to us, but they got a lot of their symbolic knowledge from the Egyptians and others. Now she said, okay, but how am I going to learn about symbols? Well, for one thing, you can come to my untidy apartment and you will find probably 3 or 4 books there about symbols, but I can't guarantee that they will tell you the story. But the story is that a symbol is a cipher that unlocks the mystery of the hidden dweller in us. There is an ecclesiastical phrase, which, if I recollect correctly, which pertains to this, says, O Lord Christ, thou hidden dweller in the human spirit, open thine eyes in us that we may see. Yes, that's it. That's it. That is what we're talking about. And so, but it requires effort. Why? Because the other faculties, or whatever we wish to call it, the other functions, but they're relatively easy to go to. You know, the external world and physical nature and even our very physical bodies, they are relatively easy to get to. One way or the other, positive or negative, in health or in sickness, you know, they are relatively easy to get to. Feelings, similarly, we emote. It just happens. Various stimuli come and we are emotional. And then if we have a bit of a noodle in here, then if we exercise our brains and our nervous system, and then we can also definitely stimulate the thinking function and the intuitive function as well. But this one, this is the hidden God, the little golden Buddha, as he has been called, inside, deeply inside the human. And if it is treated reverently and desirefully and insightfully, it will manifest. And it will carry on a dialogue with the outer personality that is primarily in symbols. Okay. Now, look around in the present day world. Look around on that nefarious computer screen and the various other things. And the politicians, for heaven's sakes, and everybody else, what are they all trying to do? They are trying to convince you that they have got the truth, and they are telling you true things. They are telling you facts. Oh yes, you know. They speak a language that is not the language of the inner human. They speak a language that for the most part is misleading and eventually leads you into trouble. People like Hitler. I don't know what is the little kid already, I heard this unnatural screeching voice, you know, on the radio. Oh, dieser Räubergeneral, dieser Herr Churchill, when he was berating Churchill, and said, who is this guy? Well, my father said, well, he's a crazy man whom the Germans were stupid enough to permit to get to the top, you know. So, and they all try to communicate their so-called facts, which are lies to you. And they want you to believe them, of course. And by then we are coming up to the thinking function and everything else. But what? They are not in the nature of a dream, of a vision, of an altered state of consciousness, of an intuitive insight. They are not. And because of that, they will not establish a link between ourselves and that hidden, deeply hidden presence. And the third conclusion that she wrote is that the symbols proceeding from the pneumatic component, that is spiritual component of the soul, reveal a path of spiritual or psychological development, which can be traced not only backward and toward a cause in the past, but forward to a goal in the future. Now what she is doing here, among other things, is she is arguing a little bit with our old antagonist, the Freudians, because that is precisely true. Freud discovered the presence of symbols, absolutely. But his position was that these symbolic communications relate to the past. The Oedipus complex and the Electra complex and this kind of a complex and that kind of a complex, all stuff in the past, things that arose in a childish mind and which are not really relevant at the present time, at least according to this. So what we have here is we have a little prophet inside of us. Not profit now. That's in the bank. But a little prophet inside. A little prophet says, look, if you understand me, what I'm telling you, you will fare well in the future. You will become conscious. You will become an individuated person, as Jung called it, because you will be an unbreakable individuum, an indivisible being, which is what you are supposed to do. And that is for the future. They'll show you your future, which is, of course, all of these things, or most of them, they also appear in ecclesiastical guise in various religions. They are there, but expressed in a different way. And so, yes, one can decipher much of popular religiosity in symbolic terms, which is what the great artists have done. The Leonardo da Vinci's and the Raphaels and the rest of them, with their magnificent religious decorative work. What do you see in all those places? Symbols. Why do they attract us? Because they are symbolic. The very presence of beauty is a symbol. It's symbolic. It is symbolic of something, of a beauty beyond this earth, of a beauty at the very height of heaven. And it's a message. It says, things can be beautiful, things can be helpful, things can be loving. They can be if you just cooperate with them. There is something inside of you that wants to do that, something that wants your life to become beautiful, your life to become kindly and friendly, and receiving friendship and receiving goodness as it comes forth. But in order to do that, you have to learn how to read the language of the Spirit. Now then, let's say the fourth conclusion is that prior to an arising of what we, at least in our circles here, call gnosis, or individuation as Jung called it, the human soul is dominated by many blind and foolish powers, projections and unconscious compulsions. Now, that's one of the less pleasant discoveries of this search. Why? because we would like to live in a world where everything is nice and is to our benefit. Of course we would, but just because we like to do that, it's not going to happen. You see. So we have to remember that there are difficulties, and that the difficulties are sometimes of a fairly powerful nature. And they are what in, let's say, in Gnostic mythic terms is referred to as the demiurgoi and archons, which are sort of troublesome mind beings, troublesome entities in the mind, which create their own realities and want you to believe in them. So let's say there are unpleasant and counterproductive influences which also arise from the deep psyche, which is really what we are talking about. And here again, I think maybe another little element needs to be mentioned, and that is that Jung said at one particular point also that if you want to discover the deep truths of life, you have to look inside of yourself. They are in the psyche, they come from the soul. The real truths are psychic truths. And if you are not able to understand that and to practice that, then you are, let's say, in trouble. So we must keep in mind that there are inimical forces that rise from the psyche also, and that has to make us cautious and has to make us develop the kind of eye that discerns what is going to be helpful to us, that is going to be good to us, and what is not. And there are no absolute criteria for these things, I'm sorry to say. If there were any, and if I knew them, I would tell you. But neither of those is true. But it is also true that we have to be on the lookout for that which is likely to retard us, which stop us. And probably one of the easier way of doing that is to keep in mind the deleterious qualities that may reside in the various functions of consciousness and the various steps whereby we move toward the spirit. If we are, let's say, excessively captured by the sensate world, well, we know what happens. Then we are materialistic and captured by external things. And why is this deleterious? Because it has a way of capturing us. The trouble with this sort of thing is that the physical has a very powerful attraction. I am sure that you have discovered that by now in various ways. And if we allow that attraction to envelop us, like the great spiders of Tolkien, to spin us, like the Attocops, to spin us, old fat spider spinning in a tree, old fat spider won't see me, as the Hobbit tells them. If we allow them to spin us into their material cocoon, then we're never going to get anywhere elsewhere. Because the material is extremely powerful. The material can capture you and not let you go. So one has to be aware that what comes out of the psyche, what comes out of the symbolic dimension of reality, is not all to our benefit, far from it. But at the same time, it's not all to our detriment either. So that is why one should not become. It's okay to read Dracula, all right? You know, I've been to Transylvania, at least to the outskirts of it and all of that. It's a great place, hardly any real vampires present. If you see one, just take your curse out and so forth, and you'll be all right. So there is no evil, there is nothing detrimental that can rise from the psyche that is destined to have power over us. Why? Because what has destined power over us is that deific hidden being, that Christ in us, the hope of glory, that golden Buddha that resides in the center of our being. That is the true ruler. But as I mentioned in connection with some of the myths that we were talking about, the myth of the king in exile, the myth of the king who has gone away. You know, this is our indwelling king, our spiritual king. And when it is pushed out pushed off his throne, when his crown is taken away, then he's no longer there to be able to be as helpful to us as possible. And that is why one of our functions is that we have to defend our inward king. I am a traditional monarchist anyway. I love coronations and things like that. I wish the King Charles would have several coronations. What the heck? But I don't think they ever crowned the king with the crown of India when he was Emperor of India. But you know something of that sort. So why? Because they are beautiful and they are archetypal, they are inspiring. What is inspiring about these crooked, power-hungry politicians all over the world? What is inspiring about them? It will be inspiring to suck them in the nose if you are properly inspired. If you're not properly inspired, then just walk out for them, leave them all. But these are important issues. In any event, there is a communication going on with the wise, with the good, with the transcendental within us, but there are also oppositional forces which want to attract our attention, want to use our psychic energy for their own purposes, and they have traditionally been called demons and all sorts of things like that, nasty beings who hold some beautiful part of our psyche, of some holy and beautiful component of it captive. That is the story of the Ramayana, because King Rama has his bride Sita, and she has been kidnapped and is held on the island, which is somewhat like the island of Sri Lanka now, and then Rama has to go and bring her back. And all the legends about Sleeping Beauty and about the beautiful queens who are captured and so forth, they all have to do with that they're beautiful and wonderful and miraculous and forces and beings within us, but they need to be liberated, they need to be brought forth. And that is why one of my advice that I harp on a lot, don't sell your heroic role in life to belief systems. You know what? Belief systems will do very little for you. Why? Because the thinking function is such that given sufficient impetus, you'll believe anything, I could tell you that I saw a battalion of hippopotamuses walking down on Beechwood Drive earlier on, because you generally consider me a pretty nice guy, truthful guy, you'll believe it. But it won't be true. Of course it won't be true. So the mind can conjure up, the thinking mind can conjure up. Over the New Age people discovered it, and they said, create your own reality. I think that sort of came up about the 60s or 70s. Well, I implore you, and I advise you, go out into this miserable world that we have created. See what we have created. See the horror within which we live, the foolishness and the deception. And maybe you created. Now that would make it kind of bad. Oh, mea culpa, oh my fault, look what I created. But be careful, because yes, the mind has powers of whereby it can create, but it doesn't have the discernment to create what it ought to. And that is why we are in the kind of trouble that we are now. We don't have that. We don't have that. But interestingly enough, there is something wise. And it is wise, and it is good, and it is kind, and it works for wholeness. And that's this strange little thing, this strange internal thing that is there, and that asks for recognition, and that given our goodwill and our action, perhaps will receive that recognition. Well, let me see, we have a couple more of these recognitions of our author here. Now let's see, where are we? Here we are. So the symbols that come from the pneumatic component of the soul, the spiritual component of the soul, they lead us forward. But we have to also watch out for the deleterious forces. All right, here. And then is the fifth conclusion. No, she's finally has come around sort of to the more unpleasant conclusions. That's the way to make a hit with people. First you tell them the good things, and then you tell them all the miserable things. In any event, she says that the alienation of consciousness, along with its attendant feelings of forlornness, dread, and homesickness, must be fully experienced before it can be overcome. So, before you can become really happy in this world, you will have to have been miserable earlier. But of course, we all feel that we have been miserable, so enough already. It's also quite understandable. But it's true that the alienation of consciousness and feelings of forlornness, dread, which means fear, and homesickness, we have to experience these. Well, I don't think it's too great a difficulty to experience them in this world, because they're being dished out to us constantly. When it's not one thing, that is trying to make us miserable, it's another, you know. And then when quite a few of them have been experienced already, but when it came to the new millennium and all of that, I thought, well, look at all the stuff that I have been through in my life, but I'm still here, you know. But still, you know, obviously quite a few things that I would rather not remember. So maybe here I am now, a nonagerian, and so maybe I will be left alone by all this dread and things. And then what comes? Comes COVID, and come the masks, and come all the other balderdash, you know. So you'll be never safe from these things. They'll always appear in some fashion. So it's really quite a difficult situation. But let us say certainly, you know, even the old Gnostics, the young forebears way back, 2nd, 3rd century, they were accused subsequently, after they were no longer there. It's very easy to accuse people when they can't talk back to you. You know? They were accused of gloominess and of world-denying pessimism. But at the same time, some of them, like Carpocrates and his family and all kinds of, they were also accused of having too much fun, you know, in various ways. Well, they would, you know, they would eat things that are not kosher, you know, and things like that, and sexual things and all of that. The fact of the matter is that the search, and when the search becomes effective for that central truth within us, we don't have to be concerned that it will be to our detriment, not at all. And those are the recognitions that this dear lady has come up with, Eleanor Bertini, and I think they're quite true. So to mention the last one, well, of course, we have to know how to face adversity. We have to know how to face dark things that may come in life. Yes, but somehow in the back of all of that, and having lived a long life now, and some years of it under considerably difficult circumstances during the war and so forth, you know, I can tell you that if your heart is where it's supposed to be, if you have a little bit of a touch of that mysterious dark little being within you, dark in the sense that it is unknown, then the most stressful, the most difficult, the most cruel experiences will happen and let you go to better things. Yeah. The Christians in the the Christian variation of religiosity, they said already it's the will of God. And perhaps it is. Maybe not of a God with a big beard in the heavens, but a little God who shines, who blazes, who embraces you from within right now. So, yes, we have to learn how to accept adversity also, and also realize that adverse circumstances will happen, but that there is also a source of the opposite of adversity, a source of blessing, a source of goodness, a source of hope, a source of redemption within us. Now, All right, why did I bring all of this up? Just because I like Eleanor Bertini? Well, I didn't never met her, so I don't know. But there's another reason. And the other reason is that these are the issues that if we consider them seriously, might bring us step by step closer to the source of insight, to the source of wholeness, to the source of salvation within us. And you find them everywhere. But of course, let's say, the great secret is that they are not in the seventh heaven, although they might be there too. Who am I to deny heaven to anybody, you know? But let us say that they are here. They are available to us. If we pay attention to them, if we learn the symbolic language the way they speak, if we reach out with our arm and pull them out of the dark recesses of the psyche, then they are going to be with us, and they are going to help us, and they primarily are going to help us to one thing, which is the value of which is beyond measure. And what is that? To have effective and ongoing contact with our own divine and immortal spirit, with our true self, with that great wonder that quietly hides away within us, that sleeps on a bed of roses like some of the princes and princesses of the great myths, but which has the intention and will accomplish the work to come forward and to have unified with us. And this is what Jung spoke of as individuation. This is what various religions refer to as redemption and salvation and whatever you wish to call it. And it is available to us if we begin to partake of the true, of the right essence. So, what does the future hold? If we know our essence, and that is Gnosis, and know it better and better, and if we embrace our essence as we are embraced by it, fearlessly and without recrimination of any kind, then the future will be promising. If we don't, then it will not be so promising. And as I indicated, the great difficulty at the present time, I think, is that once again, as at other times in history, we have been led the garden path to experiences and ideas which not only won't do us any good, but which will do us harm. Look at the craziness, look at the madness, the insanity. How many more words are there for it? That runs so wild in our culture now. Will we be able to tear ourselves away from it? Will we be able to rise to something greater? Will we be able to replace the foolishness that is poured out upon us every day and every hour with wisdom and with goodness and with truth? Well, that's up to us. And up to us individually, because this task, as every other great task, is not accomplished collectively. That's the path of the deceivers. That's the path of the archons. That's the part of the people who ruled in the Kremlin while they were destroying millions and millions of people. You know, we have to somehow recover contact with our spiritual nature. And it's not, it only looks difficult as long as we imagine that it is far from us. But once we begin to get an intimation that, you know what, this is not so far away. This is actually here, you know. And particularly when we are in such stressful and difficult situations, you know, whatever they are called, the inoculations and the masks will not save us. Very seldom will they help anything, so it seems. But at the same time, something else will save us. And that something else is always there. It knocks on our door and it says, come on, let me in. I will help you to become whole. I will help you to be kind. I will help you to be good. And I will help you to recover your original condition, which is all wonderful, all glorious, and all divine. Because you are an offspring, an emanation, a child of the eternal, of the transcendental, of the glorious, which no one can take from you, no one has taken from you, and nobody will take from you. But you know, we have to think about it, we have to feel about it, we have to intuit about it, we have to be there with this. If we are, then it will help us. If we are not there, then it will not help us. So I think we are at a crucial crossroads of history, and all the details of it we don't know. And if we knew them, then we just would be here all night falling asleep while I'm telling you, so I'm not going to do that. But we need to be more welcoming to the hidden presence, for whose sake, and for the sake of whose discovery an entire great tradition with its own martyrs, with its own difficulties, with its own catastrophes has come into being, but which is still with us. And every once in a while, when we read some literature, when we listen to some people, we say, aha, yeah, there is something here, there is something good, there is something redeeming, there is something helpful. There is a hand stretched out for us that will pull us out of the pit, but we have to grasp it. But if instead of that, we grasp for technology, we grasp for counterproductive and stupid ways of having fun, you know, to be happy is one thing, you know, but to pursue fun is another, because it generally doesn't end all that well. It is probably an insight that may have come to you every once in a while. But so this is what we need to do. And once again, you know, don't be distracted. The world is full of these distractions, both the physical world and the non-physical world. This also needs to be kept in mind. You know, people strive for the non-physical. They want to have visions, they want to have seances, they want to talk with spirits, they want to, you know, have all of these contacts. And yet, what they are really looking for is what is looking for them right here, right here. So, and when it comes, the completion, the wholeness, the individuum is incredible. And I think we, I don't want to certainly end on too pessimistic a note, because the ineffable greatness that dwells deeply within us has been discovered before, in every age and in every country and everywhere. And there is no reason why we cannot discover it, but we have to be astute and pull away from the distractions and the temptations and the falseness that is all about us. And when we do that, when we make room for that which is true and good and beautiful, it will appear. Maybe it will not stay, because difficulties will afflict us, there is no doubt about it. But difficulties can be overcome. The false can be turned into the truth, and the real can come and be and remain real. Even in difficult times such as these. Look, these are not the most difficult times in history, for heaven's sakes. How would you have fared in certain times of ancient Rome? Or more recently, in the times of where everything was grey, as a friend of mine expressed it when he went to Moscow. The houses were grey, the sky was grey, the people were grey, and he couldn't get out of there fast enough. So those were all difficult times. These are difficult times. But to the extent that we are open to that which is real, to that which is good, to that extent we will get out of this also and get into something better and into something that will reunify us as individuation should. So these are important issues to keep in mind. The future can be hopeful if the source of the hope is discovered and contacted. The future can be hopeless if it is not contacted. Who is going to do the contacting? You and I. Who is going to give us the response? The ineffable greatness, the interior Buddha, the one who always enlightens and has always done so. Yes, he has in the past, he does in the future, he will do in the future, and he does at the present. So let us continue to engage with that which is to come. Because that which is to come, that which wants to come, that which will coming is glorious and wonderful and kindly and helpful without any kind of detriment. And if we look deeply enough within ourselves, then we discover that. When we discover that, then we follow it. And when we follow it, then we get to the great, the wondrous, the glorious, the magnificent goal toward which, even when we don't know, we are still walking. May indeed that day come soon. Thank you very much. Oi.